Hello, welcome everyone. Today we are going to learn why the tropical Placidus chart always trumps the sidereal chart. Okay, so first, we need to understand why I am talking about the tropical Placidus chart. See, I have been an astrological enthusiast for quite some time, and I used to get worried and irritated by the fact that why am I not able to find out the correct transit positions, the vocation, the career of a person, why the events are not matching. See, the Indian system is actually using the sidereal whole sign. Now, to just tell you the brief of what is the sidereal and tropical, I would like to just mention that, see, sidereal is the position of the coordinates of the person born on Earth based on the star's location during the birth time. Whereas in the tropical system, it is a geocentric system, which means that when the person is born, the coordinates are taken on how the Earth is positioned uh, during that point in time. So basically, in the tropical system, we notice that the signs are changing, the houses system are changing. And that's the difference between the Placidus house system, which the tropical chart astrologers use, and the sidereal, which is the Indian system mostly applied here, use the whole sign system. Okay, so the whole sign system is basically the house is taken as a fixed degree. So the entire first house could be a sign of say 30 degree, and the next house, second house, will be the next sign 30 degrees, and so on and so forth. So suppose if a person is a Aries born, Aries rising, and in that case, what will happen that suppose he is born when the ascendant was rising at a 10 degrees of Aries. So since the whole sign system will consider the entire 30 degrees as the first house of Aries, then in that case, the ascendant will be at the center somewhere, 10 degree. And the second house will be entirely Taurus. Whereas in the Placidus house system, the first house is basically decided on the rising degree. So if we take the example of 10 degrees Aries born person, then in that case, the Placidus house will treat the 10 degrees as the first house. And as a result, what will happen whenever the second house degree falls, the houses can be unequally distributed. Okay, so the topic of the discussion is not about understanding what is Placidus system, what is a whole sign system. The topic of the discussion is why tropical chart always trumps the sidereal chart. Okay, so let me just reiterate the fact that I've been anxious and worried over the long period of time for the 20 years by following the sidereal whole sign system. And suddenly, only a few days back, it clicked me that I should be try applying this everything on the tropical Placidus system. And I really found the resonance there. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just give you an example. We'll see some chart here, and then we will see why something matters more. So why tropical Placidus matters more here and not the sidereal whole sign system. Yes. All right. So the person was born in 16th August 1961, and this is the chart that I have generated on AstroSeek, which is a website that gives us tropical Placidus system. So here we see that the sun is positioned in the 8th house in Leo sign. Now let us compare it with the chart using the sidereal whole sign system of the same native. So this is the same native born on 16 August 1961. And here you can see that the sun is in the Leo in the ninth house. So the position of the sun has changed in the sidereal whole sign system. Whereas in the tropical system, the position of the sun remains, changes into the eighth house. Now, to help us understand like which why the tropical chart matters more, we will look at the profession of the native. Okay. Now the native we already know is as a working as an ENT surgeon. If you notice that the second house here in this case, as per the tropical sign system, as per the tropical sign system, the second house is Aquarius. So why do we consider second house? Because we have to take into account the second house, the sixth house, the 10th house for career. This is a career trine. Okay, these are the Artha houses. So second house is Aquarius, sixth house is Gemini, and 10th house is, which is the mid-heaven, is Libra. Now, the position of the second house lord, which is Saturn in this case, in the tropical system, it is in the first house in a retrograde position. The planet in a retrograde position basically means that after a lot of trials and repeated efforts, the results will fructify. But we have to see why this particular chart, tropical chart, indicates an ENT surgeon rather than the sidereal whole sign chart. So let's first focus on the second house here. Second house is gone into the first house in the sign of Capricorn. The sixth lord, which is actually Gemini, so the lord becomes Mercury. And here we can see that the Mercury is in the 8,000 the sign of Leo. This is a Leo sign. And finally, we have the midheaven. Midheaven is Libra. So the lord of the Libra is Venus, and Venus goes into the sign of Cancer, which is in the seventh house. So what are the tropical placements that we can see? The tropical placement is the first combination here, which is the second lord in the first house in Capricorn, sixth lord in 8,000 Leo, and the 10th lord in 7,000 Cancer. Okay. Now just let us compare this with the sidereal whole sign, just to be clear, like what is exactly, changes. Now, if you see that in the second house is Capricorn and the Saturn is in the same house in a retrograde position. The sixth house lord is Venus, and Venus goes to the Gemini in the seventh house. And the 10th lord is Mercury. Mercury goes in the Leo in the ninth house. So what is the combination here? What is the combination in the sidereal chart? So see the second chart. Why the second chart is less medical? Let's understand that. So the second chart we have these positions: second lord in second house retrograde, sixth lord in seventh house in Gemini, and 10th lord in ninth house in Leo. Okay, now just let us compare what is the possibility of the events that can happen with the combination. Now, see, the second lord in the first house means that the income will come from the own efforts, and the person would want to work as an independent consultant. But since it is retrograde, so a lot of effort will be required. Now, sixth house is what? Sixth house is basically service. And then when the sixth house goes into the eighth house, that means it is a classic position of a person who is into the medical services. And the 10th lord going into the seventh house of Cancer, that means interaction that is based on healing and care. So basically, treatment, interacting with people, with public, because the seventh house of public and Cancer is here. That means the interaction is based on uh, care and counseling. Okay. Now let's compare this with the second chart. The second chart here, the second lord goes into the second house again in the retrograde position. So that means the earning of the income will take some time and it will require a lot of effort. And the income will come from teaching, consulting. The sixth house goes into the seventh house in Gemini. Now, this is also a combination of public interaction, but being in the sign of Gemini would mean that it is less about care, it is more about communication media. And that is why this combination also is not a classic combination of medical profession, which is sixth house Lord going into the eighth house. This is a classic position of a medical profession. Whereas the sixth house Lord going into the seventh house of Gemini is more of a public interaction related to media, communications, etc., and public dealing, like sales and marketing. And finally, we have the 10th Lord in ninth house in Leo. This is also about mentoring and ninth house things like higher education, learning, and philosophy. So if we compare the first combination with the second combination, the first combination is the tropical Placidus system, and the second is the sidereal whole sign system. We will notice that tropical Placidus system trumps every time than the sidereal whole sign system. So I hope you were able to understand like why should we be using the tropical Placidus system instead of the sidereal whole sign system, and this was able to give you some insights. Okay, we will be using more examples, and I hope you like my content. I would like you to. I am going to be more regular with the content this time, and as now since I know I have some conviction on my astrology. So I hope to see you soon. Please subscribe. Thank you.